Okay, guys, good morning. We're going to be talking today about Mary McLeod Bethune. Um, she was an educator, she was a civil rights activist, and she also was a political advocate. She is the founder of Bethune-Cookman University and the only historically black college that was founded by a woman. So, as we talk about the life of Mary McLeod Bethune, we want to think about specifically four categories: her life as an educator, civil rights activist, women's rights activist, and a political advocate. The essential question we want to think about as we move through the information is, how did Mary McLeod Bethune contribute to education, politics, and civil rights in America? So Mary was born July 10th, 1875 in Maysville, South Carolina. Her parents were Sam and Patsy McLeod. They were former slaves that deeply believed in the Christian faith. She learned early that education was important. Sam and Patsy McLeod worked for their former slave owner. They eventually earned enough money to buy 5 acres from him and built their first home. This is where Mary was born. She was the 15th of 17 children, and she was the first of her siblings to be born free, and she was the only sibling to receive an education. So, the impact she had as an educator, she used her influence and her abilities to promote education as a key to racial and social uplift. She believed education was a means to economic independence, and she also focused on empowering her students through education as a means to be self reliant. Mary herself graduated from Scotia Seminary in 1893 and Moody Bible Institute in 1895. After graduation, she started her first teaching job at Haynes Normal and Industrial Institute in Georgia. And when she saw the plight of her people, that they weren't receiving education, they didn't have health care, they just didn't have access to a lot of the necessities of life, that inspired her to start her own school. And she actually did that in 1904. It was the Daytona Normal Institute, Industrial Institute. The school started with 5 students, and within 2 years, it grew to over 250 students. And this is a picture of her with her students in front of their school. Political advocacy. So, as an educator, she began to gain notoriety. And in 1935, she founded the National Council of Negro Women to give a collective voice for justice and social rights. She also became an advisor in the Roosevelt administration, where she advocated for racial and gender equality and also promoted political representation for African Americans. As a women's rights activist, she was a strong voice and led voter registration drives to encourage women voters to the poll. She did face a lot of opposition just based on systemic racism, segregated policies and practice, and political leaders who did not consider African American and women's rights as important. She also received great opposition from organizations like the Ku Klux Klan that opposed equality for African Americans altogether. Bethune did hit another historical landmark on July 13th, 2022, when she became the first African American to be represented with a state statue in the National Statuary Hall collection at the U.S. Capitol. The statue represents her life, legacy as an educator, civil rights leader, and a women's rights advocate. So as we think about the information today and move into our discussion groups, there's two questions I want you to think about. Why do you think African Americans had to fight so hard for education and civil rights? And question number two, how did Mary McLeod Bethune contribute to education, politics, and civil rights in America? Those are going to be your group discussions. Individually, you think about, I want you to think about using your own influence to do great things and realizing that people look up to you as well. And what qualities and characteristics stand out to you that make someone great? Do they have to be smart? Do they have to be strong, athletic, wealth, being a sense of humor, kindness? Think about what qualities and characteristics you feel um, that people have that make them great. Okay, we're going to break up into our groups. We're going to do our discussion and then afterwards our think about as individually.